writing programs again and using JavaScript as the programming language, but the environment that we're programming in is just a little bit different, right? Because we're not programming in a browser anymore. We're programming on a computer. I mean, we're programming on a computer both ways, right? But we're programming more on a system outside the browser. Sure, there's a better term for that, but I can't think of it. So that opens up a lot of doors, okay? So we now have the ability to do a lot of new and interesting stuff. Now, in this course, the interesting stuff that we're going to do is not going to be really about programming new applications. Instead, part of this course is learning how to program to help support our development, our software development. Okay, so like we have a workflow. Our workflow usually consists of things like creating an HTML file, creating a style.css, creating an app.js. We link them all together. We add our code to GitHub. We push it to GitHub. We pull it from GitHub, right? The developer workflow includes all the tasks that we do that are involved in programming that are not directly related to programming, right? We're not actually programming. We're doing all this ancillary stuff around programming, right? But not programming. And so that's usually referred to as our development workflow, like the different things that we need to do to help support our programming, okay? That is not actually programming. And that's where we're going to use this new Node Package Manager node, okay? This is not the only use. Like people do full-fledged programs out of this, but this is a common use. This is such a common use that people, even who aren't programming in JavaScript, use JavaScript command line tools to help support their development workflow, okay? So we're going to learn that by learning a new package, okay, called Gulp. Okay, so we're going to spend a couple days learning about Gulp. Gulp is what we call a task runner. Okay, a toolkit to automate tools and automation, right? The course that we're in, and enhance our workflow, our development workflow. Okay, we leverage Gulp and the flexibility of JavaScript to automate slow, repetitive workflows. So I'm going to show you some things that we're not doing yet that I've mentioned over the course of our program so far. Hey, in the real world, we do this with our HTML. In the real world, we optimize our images by dragging them into the Panda website, right? In the real world, we minimize our JavaScript. We perform certain tasks that we haven't yet been doing. And if you think back to when we were optimizing our images using the Panda, what was it called? Tiny PNG. Okay, we were bringing our images in here, we drag them in, the Panda compresses them, and we download them again. Wow, that's awesome, right? Except when you're making websites every day, all day, and you've got a million images to do, right? A lot of these things are not tasks that you want to repeat manually. Most of these tasks are not tasks that you want to repeat manually. Most of these types of little tasks, right? If we're making a new website every day, or we're adding to a website every day, or we have new images coming in every day, we want to automate it. We want to tell the computer every time an image comes in, or every time I hit this one button, do these 10 things. we're essentially writing what we would call a script. Okay, a script to do this task, this task, this task, this task, this task, right? That will automate this all for us. And to do that, we're going to work from the command line to do it, believe it or not. Okay, and we're going to be using a tool called Gulp. We don't need Gulp. Gulp is not necessary. You can do it just straight from the command line with like no tools at all. But it does add a layer of simplicity. Okay, so some people are moving away from this. Some people are still on it. I think it's a nice tool for beginners. If in the future you don't use it, that's fine. Right? There's lots of tools like this. Okay, so how does this work? Let me take you to the command line and show you how to install it. And we're going to write our really simple first Gulp program. Okay. So first thing we're going to want to do, and again, I recommend that you follow along with me. Okay. If you're recording the video, that's great, but I still do recommend that you follow along with me. So we're going to open our command line. And I'll tell you a little bit more about node packages while we're here. Okay. And all this information that I'm going to be showing you right now is in the Gulp documentation. Okay, so it's all available. Do I have a link directly to Gulp? Yeah. So I have a link to some of the Gulp documentation, and through there you can get all the Gulp documentation. I have a link to a very specific place that we'll be doing, not the API. You don't want to look at the API. You want to look at the working with files. Okay, that's where we'll be talking about that shortly. Okay, so let me find out where I am here. Whoa, that's big. That's better. Okay, so yeah, okay, we'll do this one. Okay, I'll just clean this up a little bit. I just have one file in here, okay? So to install Gulp, and this is not uncommon, okay? We need to do two things. We need to install it in two ways, and some programs need this for specific reasons, and I'll explain why. So we need to do npm install gulp-cli. Does anyone know what CLI stands for?
Command line interface.
Yeah, command line interface. So when you see CLI, it usually refers to the command line. Gulp-CLI is saying, here is the Gulp package that provides you with command line commands for the command line. So this particular package gives us like stuff that we can type into the command line and hit enter, right? So npm is a command on the command line. It was installed for us when we installed Node. We need that same kind of power. We need to be able to type Gulp into the command line, okay? And so Node Package Manager, as I mentioned yesterday, not only has modules that we can use inside of our JavaScript, some of the things that we can download and install on our computer using Node Package Manager are programs that we can run from the command line. Half of Gulp is that. The other half is a module that we use inside of our JavaScript. So half of it is a set of commands we can use from our command line. The other half is stuff that we can use in our JavaScript files. So we need to install both of them. One of them, let's install the command line one first. So we get a command called gulp. I already have it installed, okay? You don't. And once we install it, the thing is with this one, we want to be able to go to any directory and type in gulp. You'll notice that some of these commands that you might have on your computer, you can only run them in certain directories. Like you have to go to the directory where that file is and then type it in, right? But other ones like code or explorer or open or git, we can run anywhere, okay? Those are considered global. Now, in order to install this gulp command globally, because as I mentioned earlier, all of our npm, all of our packages get installed into this directory. So don't do this, but watch what happens. npm install gulp-cli. So it'll install. And I'm in this directory, my first node app, okay? It's going there. Cool. So, I can update npm. Probably won't do that. So now I can type in gulp. Great. But the problem is if I exit this directory, I can't use gulp anymore. Doesn't exist. Okay, it only exists within this directory. And I use gulp. You tend to use gulp so much once you install it and say, this is what I'm going to use, you tend to install it so much that you don't want to have it installed 10 times on your computer, once for every project. You don't want Git to be installed 10 times. It's okay to have 10 Git repos, but you don't want to have the actual Git package installed 10 times, once for every project, right? So instead we do a global install, okay? And a global install means we're installing it one time on the entire computer, okay? And it's good, and we can use it anywhere. So to do that with Node,
I'm sorry, when you said that you can use it anywhere, in any folder, it will automatically go to the home directory?
It will automatically use this global install of gulp.
Global installing on home directory. So
in your home directory.
So we have to be at...
No, you don't have to be anywhere. You just tell it, install it globally, and it will install it in the correct place for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you type in, any directory is fine. I'm not in my home directory. I'm inside home/my first node app. Okay. npm install -gulp-cli -g global, G for global. Okay, before I type that in, I want you to see, I don't have any node modules folder here. Okay, and after I install this, I still won't have one. So this is the command you should type. Mine will probably finish before yours. While yours might take a while, depending on the speed of your computer. Okay. While this is running, I'll show you. I still don't have a node packages folder or a node modules folder in here because I did not install it to this directory. I installed it globally.
Sorry.
Global. Yep.
I got a bunch of arrows. It says error negative permission denied.
Yeah. So Mac users, you need to do sudo in front of it. Sudo npm install gulp-cli -g. Sudo elevates your privileges, but you'll need to type in your password. Only if you're installing global ones. If you're installing ones into your directory, you don't need sudo.
Okay, gotcha. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. So Mac users sudo npm install gulp CLI -g. Okay. Regular users, no sudo. Windows users. This actually installs it in your home directory. I believe. Where is it? I think it's in here. Yeah, I can't remember where it actually installs these. Oops. It's not really that important. You can install them. You can uninstall them the same way. npm uninstall gulp-cli-g. You have to make sure you include the -g in the uninstall. Otherwise, it's going to look into your current directory to try to uninstall the local one. Okay, so we have a global one and we have a local one. Yes.
Put sudo again when you're uninstalling as well for Mac?
Probably.
Okay.
If it says error, can't do it, like something to do with privileges or permissions, then yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, is everyone installed? Yeah, okay, so now you can go around anywhere in the terminal and type in gulp because it's global. It's a global package, okay? Now it won't do anything because we only have half of it done. We need the other half, okay? What I would recommend doing is I would recommend going to your current project that you have right now that you're working on and copy CP the CSS file from over there into a new directory. So what I want you to have is essentially a brand new empty directory with a CSS file in it. Okay, one CSS file. And it should have stuff in it. So I copied my previous app, copied that over.
Hey, John.
Okay. Yeah.
Is this like moment when we installed if we're on PC where we have to do it through our VS terminal? Because I did it through Git Bash, and then I did get like some warnings and stuff like that.
Warnings are fine.
Yeah, then afterwards, if I type gulp though, bash says gulp command not found.
Did you include the -g?
Oh, it's gulp-g?
No. When you installed it, did you include npm install gulp CLI-g?
Oh no, I just did the CLI. Sorry.
Yeah.
npm gulp-cli-g.
So it looks like this. npm install.
Yeah.
Gulp CLI-g. This G is really important. Yeah.
Okay. Missed that. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. So once you have this set up, so essentially you have a new directory, okay, my first Node app, whatever you want to call it, and you have a single file in it. Some CSS file, because we're going to be modifying this. Okay. So I'm just giving you an extra second. Hi, Ray. Just give you an extra second to get this set up. All right, so now we need to install the other half of Gulp. Okay, Gulp is two pieces. One is commands that we can run from the command line, and the other supporting piece, which is JavaScript stuff, right? It helps us do Java. It helps us with our tool, our development workflow by giving us commands that we can run but also giving us new JavaScript objects that we can work with, kind of like Moment, right? So we need to install that now. So I want to show you something interesting. Do I want to show you that yet? No, I don't want to show you that yet. Okay, so we'll just do this. npm install gulp. npm install gulp in the directory that you want, okay? Because this is now going to be local to your project. Now, gulp has several dependencies. So unlike Moment yesterday, that didn't really have any, you'll see gulp is installing several other packages as well, because it relies on other packages too. So it has its own dependencies. Okay, so the install is going to take longer and it's bigger. Okay, and you're going to get lots of warnings, which is fine. Deprecated.
Lots of warnings and errors.
You shouldn't get any errors.
In the mirror, so there's configure error, stack errors, about 5 of them. System command. It says something about no Xcode or CLT version detected. So most of my errors occurred with GYP. Just leave it.
GYP, right? Node-GYP.
Yes.
So you are going to need to install. I forgot this. No. This is programming. This is programming. Believe it or not. Windows users, you don't have this problem. Mac users, you do. So you need to install Xcode command line tools. Catalina. I forgot this because I'm no longer using a Mac. So what you really need is this. Try running this.
Xcode select --.
Yeah. Oh, that's not good. Yeah. Xcode -select -- install.
For convenience, you can just find Xcode in App Store, install it.
Yeah, but then you have to download it. You have to download it
one time. Yeah.
But if you're not doing Xcode development, it's kind of pointless to install Xcode. So if you have Xcode already installed, then you can install the command line tools through a little like button in Xcode, but like this will just download the tools instead of downloading all of Xcode. Is it working? Sorry.
It says command line tools are already installed. Use software update to install updates. So apparently I have it, not just updated.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I would do. Bing, did you encounter any errors?
No.
No, okay, yeah, so it's probably just needs to be updated. And again, I'll be honest, all of you, this is normal, okay? Like I have spent entire days troubleshooting my computer about why I can't install something, or why something's not working, or why my Git suddenly breaks with an update to my computer. If you are not a computer expert, you will become a computer expert, right? But because you have to be, right? You can't just like bring your laptop to your boss and be like, can you fix it? Right? You're going to have to learn to fix all these problems yourself. And I'm not saying, Saria, you should know this by now. What I'm saying is this is part of the process, right? We don't just program. we also need to keep our environment working so that we can continue to program. Because as you go further in this program and as you go further in your career, things get more complicated, right? We're not just building HTML, CSS, and JS files. We're doing so much more. And the environment in which we program becomes more and more complex, okay? So I'm gonna keep going, Saria. See if you can get that fixed, okay?
Yeah, just go. Thank you.
Yeah, and then we'll check back in. All right, so we got our node modules installed. Inside of our node modules, we have gulp. Not gulp CLI, right? We're doing two halves here. We've got gulp CLI, the commands from the command line, and now we have our JavaScript pieces, okay? And we're going to use both to do a little something to help our development workflow, okay? Next, gulp. Yeah.
What is command for install local file?
What's that?
Command for local installment, because I tried with the gulp install and it doesn't work.
npm install gulp.
Oh, I need npm. Okay.
Yeah. So most of the packages that we're going to install are going to be npm. Okay. Now, we need gulp by default. So when we type in gulp, it says no gulp file found. So a gulp file is a specific file that we put all the stuff that we want to execute in. So so we have a bunch of tasks that we want to be executed. We need to put all those tasks inside a file called a gulp file. And all a gulp file is just a special name for a JavaScript file. So we can create a new file, gulp file.js. There's just JavaScript. It's just a special name. It's just like we always call our HTML pages index, our main HTML page index, okay? So we're gonna create a new file called a gulp file in this directory, okay? Okay. Now, the next thing that we need to do. So now we have gulp set up, okay? Kinda. So if we type in gulp, we have a gulp file there, okay? By default, it's going to run, and it should probably do nothing. Yep. Using gulp file, task never defined default, to list available tasks, try running gulp-tasks. So if this is a task runner, right? We need to create tasks. We need to say, if we're talking about, let's go back to that thing, image optimization, right? I don't want to have to bring my photos, my pictures into here every single time. I want gulp to optimize my images for me automatically. Today, we're not doing that. Tomorrow, we'll do the image optimization. It'd probably be better to do it today, but image optimization is a couple more steps. So I want to find the easiest one. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be compressing our CSS. Okay, so it's very common in the development world in the web to have two CSS files. One that is fully expanded for developers, right? Because we want to work in a CSS file like this, right? It's got lots of indentation. It's very clear. It's easy to read, okay? But honestly, all these little spaces take up space on the computer. They increase the size of the file. Not tremendously, but a compressed CSS file looks like this. Still, this is valid CSS. It looks terrible, right? And this is not the type of environment that we want to work in with respect to CSS, right? Like, we don't want to work in a file that is just one line long with no spaces. But honestly, this takes up less space. This is a smaller file size. And so we want a task to automatically compress our CSS files for us, amongst other things. So we're going to automate this task. So that way, when we're ready to put our website online, we hit the button and Gulp will automatically convert our CSS for us. That's just one of the things it will do. We're going to hit the button and Gulp is going to do 10 things for us. It's going to do our CSS. It's going to optimize our images. It's going to optimize our HTML. It's going to run it through Prettier to make sure all the indentation is correct. It's going to take a look to make sure we have brackets in all the right places. It's going to do all sorts of things for us. We hit one button, it does this. Okay, so we're going to automate all that. So today we're going to go towards this, okay, using Gulp. So we have our Gulp file installed. Now we need to write some tests, but we need each one of these. So we have Gulp CLI, we have our Gulp file. Now we need special tools in addition to this for each little thing that we want to accomplish. So today I said, I want to minimize my CSS or compress my CSS using Gulp. So I know of a library that we can use to do this. So I'm going to go to the intranets and I'm going to type in Gulp minify CSS. And actually, I want to use this one, clean CSS. So I'll post it in Slack. It's already in the exercise for today. If you need the link or Slack, I'll post in Discord so you can go to it. Okay, so now we need, yes, we need another package. We need to install more stuff because the way that packages tend to work is each package does one thing very specifically, okay? It's not like you just install one thing and does everything. There are some of those, but we tend to gravitate towards very specific things because I don't want to install the kitchen sink. I don't want to install everything if I'm only going to use 25% of it, right? I only want to pick and choose exactly what I need. So what does Gulp Clean CSS do? It is a Gulp plugin. So we're using Gulp to minify CSS using another thing called Clean CSS. How do we install it? npm install Gulp Clean CSS. Oops. You can type, I haven't talked about this -- save dev yet. That's fine. You can use it, no big deal. Or you can just use this one on the right-hand side. npm I Gulp Clean CSS. I'll talk a little bit about save dev in the future. Now's not the time. You can type it in. I don't think anything will happen, so it's no big deal. Okay. In the same directory. Okay. You don't need to type in -- save dev. You can. It's not a big deal.
You know, I tried it. It installs.
It does?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I think GYP doesn't really matter, maybe. I don't know.
Wait, this one installed, but Gulp hasn't installed. Right? Gulp has not installed yet. Have you installed Gulp?
Oh yeah, it is installed. It's just showed a lot of error regarding GYP. That's it.
Okay, well, we might run into problems when we try to run, but that's okay. It's okay. Okay. So I know we're like really heading down a rabbit hole here, and this is what it takes, right? You do it once, you do it a couple times. Once we get this installed one time, we're simply going to be adding on to this. So today's a little bit like kind of like that first introduction to Git, where it's like I don't really get it, but we're going to keep doing this for a couple days, and we're going to just add little pieces on, and then you should kind of start to understand. Next up, okay, so next up, we are going to learn how to use this. And part of learning how to use this is reading the page, the NPM page, or the other documentation page, which is over here. Their homepage or their repository, okay? If the information is not on this page, on their NPM page, the information should be on their GitHub homepage, okay? Every repository, every little package is going to be a little bit different. But most of the packages we're going to use in this class are very straightforward, okay? So actually, I'm just going to copy and paste this, and we're going to do this. I'm going to walk you through it. So I'm just going to copy and paste this here. And I actually need to rewrite this a little bit. Okay, so don't copy and paste it. I just need a template for myself, okay? So there's a couple pieces that I do need from here. The rest of them I need to manually do. Okay, are you ready? We're going to write our Gulp file now. So there's a couple new things. So here we are going to use Gulp. Gulp has a very specific way that it wants its files written, okay? And I know this because I went through the documentation, and you can see it right here, okay? I can just copy this right here. Okay, if you read through this documentation, you would have the same information that I have, okay? But I will give you a head start and just show you one task and explain a couple things. You don't have to read all the documentation unless you're unsure of something or you want more information, okay? So there's a couple things that we haven't seen yet. And I'm just gonna say Gulp. We looked at require yesterday, yes? Right, so yesterday we required moment because we needed to pull in moment into this JavaScript. Today, we're requiring Gulp because, again, this is just a dumb JavaScript file. It's just a JavaScript file. It needs to pull in Gulp that we installed, not Gulp CLI, Gulp, npm install Gulp, right? That's the JavaScript, that second half, that JavaScript library, we need to pull that in because it's got a lot of really interesting stuff, okay? Next, we also need to pull in clean CSS, right? We just installed it. npm I clean -css, gulp -clean -css, right? We just installed that. We also need to use that. We're going to have to pull that in as well. Okay. Now, Gulp is awesome because what it does is it gives us the ability to go, it does a lot of stuff. create tasks, run tasks, and part of those tasks means go find a file or a group of files, run them through a machine, which we get to define. The machine part is what we get to define, and spit them out the other side in a location that we choose. So Gulp handles a lot of the in-between. It allows us to connect things together. Do this, take the results of that, pass it over to the next thing, take the results of that, pass it over to the next thing, take the results of that. And it does this through this concept called pipes. Okay, so the way we usually start, and I'm gonna comment this out. I'm gonna start with a very simple one. So it looks like this. So we're gonna write a function called minify CSS, regular old JavaScript function, okay? And we're gonna use some of the special Gulp syntax. So we're going to use this object here that we pulled in. So this time it's an object. Yesterday, moment, it was a function. Today it's an object. Okay, how do I know that? I know that, I read the documentation, I looked at it, you can tell. I'm not putting parentheses on it. Okay, so when I did this, I got an object out of it. That object has a thing called SRC, source, the source of my file or files, okay? Now in this case, I want to minify my CSS file. So I need to tell it where my CSS files or files is located. It can do 1 file, it can do 10 files. It actually doesn't care. And we don't need to do a for loop, or we don't need to loop over files. We just say, go get the file or files here, do this, and I'll put them somewhere else. Okay, so let's tell it about our file. Where is our file located? Well, it's relative to this Gulp file. It's actually in the same directory. So we could just say sample.css. Okay. Now, the big question is, what do we want to do with that? Well, we want to pipe it. And so the syntax really looks like this, right? It's just a long string, but it's a lot like the fetch then kind of syntaxy stuff where we put it on the next line and we indent it, right? So that way we're not making it super long because we're going to have many of these pipes. So what pipe is saying is like, so go get the file and then take that file and send it over to somewhere else to do something, okay? And so we will have many pipes because we can have many different things that process this file along the way. And so we'll be like, go get this file, send it over here. It's going to, think of it like a car wash, right? It's going to hose down the car. Okay, now take that car and send it over here. They're going to soap it up, right? Then take that car and send it over here. They're going to rinse it down and take it and send it over here, and they're going to dry it. And then finally, we output it on the other side of the car wash. So that's kind of the process we're going through here, where the first line here is getting the file. The second line here is going to be do the first thing that we want. Now, in our car wash, or in this case, we're only doing one thing. Our car wash is an all-in-one. It's that gas station car wash where you just pull in, it does everything all at once, and you just come out the other side. It's not like the fancy ones where it's got like 20 people working on your car, okay? We're going to take our file and we're going to send it to, we're going to pipe it to Clean CSS. Clean CSS is that other library we installed right here, right? And again, this is tied, this word right here, Clean CSS, is tied to this. So over here, Gulp is an object, Clean CSS is a function. So I'm piping it to this function. Okay, we don't need any compatibility. We can get rid of that if we want. Not necessary. It doesn't matter. You can leave it. It's all it's doing when we're compressing our CSS. We also have options like what level of compatibility do we want the CSS to have? Okay. Like just do we want it to work all the way back to Internet Explorer 6? Because you might need to do special things. Okay. You don't need to worry about that. The important part is we're piping it. We're taking the file. We're sending it to Clean CSS. Clean CSS is going to do its thing. And it's going to, then we need to take the output of that, pipe it again. Okay, it did its thing. It car washed it, it dried it, it did everything that it needed to do here. And we're going to now send it somewhere else. Destination. We're done. That's all. That's the whole process for us. So these words, SRC, pipe, and dest, those are all brought to us by Gulp. Those are, yes, this is all JavaScript, right? But those are created on this Gulp object. Those are special and they're only available to us because we brought in Gulp. If we didn't bring in Gulp, we don't have .src.pipe or the dest function. Okay. Now, output is going to be sample.min.css. The file name. Okay. We don't want the file name. My bad. We don't want the file name. We want the location. It will automatically create the file name for us. Instead, we want to give it a location. And our location is going to be this directory. How do I refer to this directory?
One dot.
Yeah. Do not put slash. Slash means root. You will get permission errors. You are not allowed to put things there. Okay, we're now working with the file system. Okay, we're working with the file system here. All right. So we have our function to minify CSS. Now we need to tell Gulp about it. And this is the part I always forget because, yeah, right here. It's a new syntax for Gulp. We need to make it available to the command line. Okay. And so we need this special keyword called exports. This is not a Gulp thing. This is it's kind of tied to require. Okay. We need to make it available for other people. And so we use exports. And instead of build, we usually put the name of the function that we want to export, and then we give it a name. So we're saying, take this function and export it as this name. Okay. So this is the last line. Actually, there's one other piece here. Okay, this is putting this in and putting this down here. This is a Gulp thing, and it needs to know, it needs to have this so it knows when the task is done. Okay, it doesn't know by default when the task is done. So you need to tell it when the task is done. And all we do is we pass it in this variable, which we're not using. Okay, Gulp will figure this stuff out. And so this is just something you do. It's just something you do. Okay. So you put the gas in the tank and then you use it, and that's it. You don't need to know exactly how it works. All right, so I'm going to move this stuff here. And we're going to save this and we're going to run this. So on my other tab, you have sample.css. Okay. Now, I'm going to run this Gulp task. I call this task minify CSS. So watch what happens when I type in Gulp. It's going to say, you never defined a task called default. By default, Gulp is looking for a task called default. I don't have that, and that's fine. We'll create that later. But if we want to see the tasks, we can always type in gulp -- tasks. And we have one task, minify.css. Right? That's the one task we created. And it knows about that because of this. If I didn't have this line, it doesn't know about any tasks. No tasks, it has no idea. This export tells it which tasks I have. Now, I'm going to run that task. Gulp, space, the task name. Oh, you're going to need this, sorry. Gulp.dest, I forgot. It's not just dest, it's gulp.dest. Because it belongs to the gulp object. Otherwise, it's like where did that come from? And we run it again, and it says, using your gulp file, I'm going to start minify CSS, and I'm going to finish minify CSS after 15 milliseconds. And if we come over here, and I click on my CSS file, it has been minified. Okay, you see that? All one line. And I don't have a comparison anymore because L-H 928 bytes. What was it before? 1.3K. We saved, that was like 40%, 30% we saved. Okay, and that's not much, but consider this. This is not a big CSS file, and you have many CSS files in your project, big project, okay? So we're saving lots of memory. Questions? I've got one more thing to show you, but I'll pause now for questions. So that was a lot. Okay, that was a lot. We went through a lot. And you probably are wondering, like, do we really need to do this? All this overhead just to program? The answer is yeah. Yeah. This will save a lot of time in the long run. It doesn't seem like it right now, but over time, you spend 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes every 2 days minifying CSS, which you will do. Okay, we're not quite there in our development workflow. Like, we're not quite there that we need to do this every day. Right now, it's not saving you any time. In fact, it's creating more work for you. But long term, this is something that you will be doing. And you will want to automate this. Spend 15 minutes writing the task, save yourself 5 minutes every 2 days. Over a course of 1 month, you're saving yourself an hour. Over the course of a year, you're saving yourself 20 hours, right? That's 20 more hours of work you can put out. Now, but then you multiply that by all these little tasks, and suddenly you're saving yourself 150, 200 hours. And at $100 an hour, 200 hours, that's a lot of money. Okay. Any questions about this? Okay, so we've got a little problem. And our little problem is we're overwriting our file. That's a problem. We shouldn't overwrite our file. Okay. What we often have inside of our applications going forward is we often have our files separated. Okay. And if you're playing around, okay, so I'm asking you to take your assignment that you're going to be handing in at the end of the day, okay? After you hand it in and you have an hour for an exercise tonight, okay, I'm asking you to take your assignment and run this. Now, this can be destructive. As you see, if I run this, my CSS gets all mangled and it's not workable for me anymore, okay? Please make sure you at least commit your stuff before you do this, but this is not typically the method that we use, okay? Normally, we have two versions. We have two directories, and you'll find this to be very common amongst a lot of programs that you go to look at. We have a source directory and a destination directory. Our source directory is where most of our stuff actually lives. We operate within our source directory. So inside of our source directory, this is where our index.html would be. This is where our JavaScript would be. Okay, this is where we work. This is our source code, the source directory, source code. Okay, we're not doing this right now because we haven't needed to. But now that we're taking our files and we're doing stuff to them, we need a place where we work, and then we need an output directory where after all the images are compressed, all the HTML is compressed, all the CSS is compressed, all the JavaScript is uglified and upgraded, all these things have occurred, we need a place to put that output, because that stuff is not the stuff that we work in, where we work with, okay? So we work inside of our source directory, and we output things to our destination, our dest directory. And you can see this in practice. If you go to Moment.js, you go to Moment.js's GitHub, right here. You can see this in practice. They have a lot of other stuff going on, but they have their SRC directory. And they don't have a destination directory, they have a distribution directory. Same idea. Dist or dest, both of them are acceptable. Okay, so this is where they're doing their work. This is where their libraries are located. Moment.js. Okay, so they've got their JavaScript all here. Okay, now their destination directory or their distribution directory is going to have Moment.js, but it's going to look very different. It's gigantic. It's humongous. Okay, because it's very different. This is the one that they use for distribution. This is the one that you download for your machine to use Moment. This is the one that they are actively working on. So they work in here, and then they hit a button, and it produces an output that we can use. Okay, and that's kind of the same process that we're going by here. So we want to output things to this destination directory from this source directory. Okay, so we're going to have to modify. Let's take a look at our source directory. We're going to have to modify our script a little bit. I'm going to make a directory called CSS. I'm going to remove sample into CSS. Great. Okay, so I have index, then I have two directories, CSS, JS. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here to my gulp file, and I'm not going to say, instead of saying all my CSS or one CSS file, I'm going to say go find all my CSS in the source/CSS/star.css. Go into the source directory, and inside there, go into the CSS directory and go find all the CSS files in there. And I'm going to say, it's asking me, where do I want to output it to? I want to output it to dest/CSS. Okay, it will create that directory for me. And it will automatically write the files there. So it goes through all the CSS files. I only have one, but it will create another matching minified compressed CSS file in this other directory for each one of these. So we'll save that and we'll run it. And I ran the task, minify CSS. So now if I go into my cd dest directory, you'll see I have a CSS folder, which I didn't create, that has a CSS file that has code. We'll just cat sample CSS. One line of compressed CSS. And my original file is untouched. I outputted my original file, cat, and from source CSS, untouched. So this is the beginning. We're just doing one thing right now, but soon we're going to be chaining all these things together. Okay, we're going to have many tasks. We're not just going to have one task. Here we just have one task. We're going to have many tasks. We're going to have a default task. We're going to be chaining things together. We're going to be outputting a bunch of stuff. Okay, and then once we get to React, this will all make a bunch of sense. Okay. Any questions here for all of you who are recording? Here is a sample of the final product. That is Gulp. So tonight, all I'm asking you to do after you're done is exercise 9. Using assignment 1, install Gulp, not Gulp SAS. Gulp clean CSS. We're going to do Gulp SAS soon. Output to a new dest directory. So all you're going to do is run this task in your assignment 1 that you're working on, or you're just finishing, or you just finished. Install Gulp clean CSS. Write a Gulp task that will compress your CSS. Output it to a new directory called dest. That's it. Okay. So you're probably going to watch this video again. You're probably just going to type in the things, and that's okay, right? A lot of this is there's definitely, like, you need to have a level of understanding of what's going on. But for today, just getting it working, installing the things, that I would say that's good enough. Okay. Getting it working, installing the things tomorrow and the day after. And as we continue to add on to this, you will inherently start to come to grips with the syntax and understand more of this. Okay. Questions? So that's it for today. Obviously, we have an assignment due at 3:15. Don't be late. Don't submit it late. Okay. Remember, there's 2 assignments. You also need to share your GitHub with me. So share that with me.
For the GitHub, do we just copy the URL and just paste it into the text in the assignment?
For that one, you also need to include me, right? You need to invite me to it. Yeah. So yes, both of those. You need to invite me to it and you need to paste the text. Just the URL. Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah.
I invite you like yesterday, but it says waiting for waiting for you to accept that.
Yeah, I haven't accepted most of them yet. I'm just a little bit behind on my stuff.
Oh, okay. Because I saw like Dark was like successfully accept.
Yeah, I just haven't accepted yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so there you go. Let's call it a day for now. You still have some stuff to work on. If not, dig into Gulp. If you're done, dig into Gulp. Dig into more library stuff. Dig into more API stuff. Improve on your code. Update your CSS. Play around with the CSS that I built. There's always lots to do. Okay. Tomorrow I'll be throwing something new at you with a shorter time frame. Okay. The next project, the next assignment and the final project are going to be incrementally harder, not dramatically, but incrementally more difficult. Okay. So just be prepared. Make sure you understand everything. Okay. But it's going to be a lot of similar stuff. Like the challenge here is not necessarily working with the APIs. It's working with the data that we get back and manipulating it into something that we want so that way we can display it or store it or pass it or do whatever we want with it. That's the challenge. And that's often the challenge. Okay. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. You have till 3:15. 3:15? Yeah, 3:15. Okay. So enjoy your morning, go take a break, go for a walk, and we'll talk to you later.